Howdy, all of you delicious people. I am here today to view Quantum Leap Season 1, and I believe that this Genesis storyline is to be a two-parter that ended up getting lumped into an hour and a half thing. And so, immediately, instead of stating, two episodes or whatever, I'm just going to state that this is a two-parter, and someone can go on and correct me, because wherever I was to go on and watch this pilot of this show, it seemed to have given me an hour and a half instead of just giving me two parts. So I was a little bit confused by going into IMDb and everything was separate, and I was like, what the heck? So let me know if you go into Peacock or whichever and it has two separate things that are 44 minutes, or if it's an hour and a half. I'm so confused. So before I even get into here. So, with that said, we go on to this two-parter, and we are dealing with time periods of 1956, 1968, and then 1972. We rarely end up getting any bit of 1972 because that, of course, is to lead us into the focus of what is to be the following episode after this two-parter. So, in 1972, we really just see Sam, who is to be this doctor teacher at this college, and when Sam is to arrive here, he all of a sudden then turns, and then we end up getting the roll credits and so on and so forth. So we, of course, like any normal pilot, don't go on and get a real legitimate intro in this episode, because of course not, because we are to really just get the Quantum Leap theme song being put throughout the episode, because I guess they really just didn't have any music to play beyond the theme song. And so anyways, now I can go on and kind of play around and just talk briefly, I hope, about the history that I have with this show, because this show is technically about history anyways. So, I, of course, was to originally watch this show through reruns on a network called Sci-Fi. And so I thoroughly enjoyed this show. I was to coincidentally wake up at the same time every day during a certain time period to watch Quantum Leap and watch a crap ton of just a marathon of it. And so when I was to have heard that there was to be Quantum Leap 2022 that came out, I was like, okay, I'm really interested in that because I saw the original show. But I feel like when I'm watching the Quantum Leap 2022, there's only so many things that I can remember from the original show. So if it seems that this original Quantum Leap review really interests people, I will continue on reviewing this. But as always, it seems for every time I'm going to go on and review a show, there is always some high points, and then so we'll just kind of see. If it seems people are really interested in this, people subscribe for this and whatever, then I will keep trying to go on and do this series as much as I can. Granted, regardless if there is new releases, then I might be able to do this review on other days. So, anyways, going into this this two-parter. So, we of course go on and have Sam, who is to go into this first leap and have complete amnesia, not really, kind of barely knowing who he is, and also it seems not knowing where he is at. It takes a while for Al to even make his way to Sam, and the funny thing of it is, in this early stage, we have Al that can't really go on and tell Sam much of anything. And it seems that in the Quantum Leap 2022, we have them like stretch that through a number of episodes where it seems that Ziggy in that show like is to be on the fritz, and like there is not much information that they can figure out for a song in that episode or in those episodes so far. So anyways, so with Sam, for 1956, we have Sam who is leaped into a man named Tom, and Tom is to be an Air Force pilot that is to be flying these X-2s that are, of course, to desperately need to make it to Mach 3. And so, come to find out, the guy in this two-parter called Weird Ernie, somewhere down the road, ends up reappearing on another episode, and Sam ends up calling him Ernie, and the guy does not respond to that because it's like, oh no, like, I'm not Ernie, I'm so-and-so. I don't remember what he ends up being. But oddly enough, like, Sam in that episode had done this weird goofy leap where there was a number of people from a number of different episodes that all came back to all be these different characters, and Sam ended up getting so confused. And Al had to figure out how to get back to Sam to try and figure out what the heck was going on in this leap. And in all, I think it was like a minor episode, like a bunch of guys were all minors. I don't remember. It's very weird. So something went haywire in that episode. If in the early parts of this episode, Al is to state that what ended up happening with the Quantum Leap thing ended up going caca. Caca! So, anyways, so we are to also have Tom, who is dealing with a pregnant wife, a fishing trip that he has to go on and make with his son, and we have also Sam trying to desperately figure out what could be his father's phone number in the time period of which that he is in, so Sam can call his dad, because Sam desperately wants to go on and just speak to his father, who of course has passed away within Sam's knowledge. The funny thing about this two-parter is we, of course, end up having Sam's dad being showcased on this show, and they end up later on changing, of course, Sam to look more like Sam. Because Scott Bakula ends up not only playing himself, but then is to also play his dad. And so it's kind of goofy how they change that up. To where it seems that Scott Bakula is to play his own father, but the goofy thing of it is that, like, it was nowhere close to the same as what Sam's dad looks like. And I don't know, I guess, like, you could just state it's like, well, and like, this was a different time period, so Sam's dad can look different. I don't know, like, it is what it is. So, but I thought that was funny. So anyways, after it seems that Sam, and I'll try to go on in more specifics about the episode in spoilers, like, I'm just kind of trying to ram all of this out because there's a lot to go on here. After Sam is to go on and accomplish his goal, and immediately assume that the Mach 3 is the one thing that he needed to accomplish and he could leap out, Sam then realizes that he is still stuck in 1956. And he's like, well, why haven't I left yet? Al goes on and explains, he's like, well, maybe you're just going to have to go on and just continue being this guy. Like, maybe you're just going to have to live this guy's life until we figure out how to leap you out of here. And so then Sam ends up finding out that the whole Mach 3 situation was not the one thing that he needed to go on and accomplish. Instead, we come to find out that Peggy is going into labor, and Sam is to, in all technicality, need to be there for this moment to try and help Peggy out during this pregnancy moment, because she is going into labor, it seems, and there seems to be a problem with this labor. So we then go on after that and have Sam, who is to leap into a guy named Fox. I state that I'll probably go on and get more accurate stuff of names and so on and so forth within spoilers, because I'm going to go on and kind of flip through certain things here to get accurate names of certain characters. So it seems that Fox is going to the tail end of his baseball career, as Fox seemingly is going on and retiring for baseball. And so we have Sam that goes on and is to kind of pull away from this baseball game to ask Al about, like, well, what had happened from my last leap, and now why am I here? And so Al is to go on in this leap and now give Sam a much more bit of information about Fox, and that this guy, of course, was to get a leg injury, and now, of course, he has just been, like, here for so long in this team, who is the Waco Bombers, and so Sam as Fox is to have to go on and leave his baseball career on a high note. So that leap ends up leading Sam to figure out what his name is, his full name, and so Sam also is to call his father, and we get some emotional moments in this pilot. I didn't cry, but I was like, oh man, this is so nice. And then, of course, we then have Sam go on and leap on to a doctor in this college thing. And so with that said, that's a lot that I have to go on and just state here. But hopefully I'm going to go on and be able to give you a little bit more details when we actually get into spoilers. So let me know in the comments below how you liked the original Quantum Leap, or maybe you're a bigger fan of the more 2022 product, because it's a 2022 show. So it really is. So, because immediately when I was going into this this original show, I was like, man, this is so great. This is so great. It's easily great. Like, I don't know why, like, we can't have this kind of thing easily through the other Quantum Leap show. Like, this was so easily good. And I know a lot of people just go on like, well, that's because you just like old TV, or you just like old whatever. And I'm like, no, like, this show didn't have to try as hard as what Quantum Leap 2022 does, and it easily succeeds. Just does. But then again, also, the original Quantum Leap does focus a lot on, like, race stories and I'm hoping at some point people will not go on and get offended about certain episodes, and whichever. Like, I'm just gonna go on, and if it seems that this goes well, like, I'm going to like try to like be as sensitive as possible when those episodes show up, because I know there's a lot of them. There's so many of them in this show. Uh, and that's one thing that I didn't like about this show, was there were so many of those kinds of stories. But anyways, with that said, let's go on. Let's just go into the double five time territory. Let's go into spoilers so I can go on and just kind of get this one done, because who knows how long this is actually going to take. There's a lot of stuff to go on, and there's a lot of breaks in certain places. So with that said, let's go on into the double five time territory, because I think it's about that time yet again to, of course, go into spoiler time. Spoiler time. It's about that time you spoil this episode, and I'm kind of worried because I feel like I'm gonna miss one thing and it's gonna derail like a bunch of stuff. But again, that's how always every review goes. So like, I shouldn't be surprised by that. So spoilers, everybody. You can go on and see the Quantum Leap show either on Peacock or an app that I've been going on to currently called Doxy, Doxcy. You can go on and see both this Quantum Leap and the current product of the year 2022 Quantum Leap, both on Doxy as well as Peacock. So with that said, let's go into this two-parter. So, in the beginning of this episode, we of course have Al, or Albert, however you want to, or if you want to also want to say Calavici. We have Al that is driving around cruising for chicks, because it seems that Al is to always go on in this show and be talking to Sam about some party he went to, or some girl he picked up, or some girl he banged, or whatever. Al always has those kinds of stories, or whatever he was going on and doing that got interrupted because he needed to come here and deal with Sam leaping. So it always becomes like a really fun, interesting show where Al just kind of comes in there and he's like wearing like some goofy attire, and then Al has to go on and explain it for whatever reason. So Al is going on and picking a girl up on the side of the road who seems to have a flat tire. Al is to state, like, you know what, I would go on and I would change this tire for you, but you know what, I just can't. So Al goes on and picks up this girl, and this girl notices that this car is very unusual, and this girl's going on and asking Al, it's like, well, hey, like what is this car? And Alice stated, it's like, well, the car is very experimental. And so it seems that there is to be all these kind of goofy gadgets and all these weird things that Al is kind of hitting buttons with. And again, I guess there's zero reference of that in the Quantum Leap 2022 show, which kind of sucks. So we have Al that all of a sudden ends up getting a phone call from Gushy, and Gushy is stating that Al had jumped into uh, the room to go on and leap the dome thing that Sam is to go into to go on and leap, and Al is then stating, it's like, well, wait a minute, like, we haven't gone on and like got everything up and running. And we of course have Gushy, who's just like, well, he just went, like, I guess he just naturally assumed that everything was just going to work out, and so Sam just wanted a test run, we're not quite sure. So Sam of course is to realize, he's like, oh my god, now I have to go on and I have to like now jump into like going and getting to Sam so I can help him out. So Sam ends up going on to Leap, and he then arrives in 1956. The easy way of which to realize that is in the episode we go on to have this picture of this baseball team, I believe, and it ends up saying like 1955. So it's like, oh, okay, so this is to tell us that this is 1956, I guess. So we have Sam, who is to wake up as Tom Stratton in this bed next to this pregnant woman, which of course Sam doesn't realize is pregnant just yet. And Tom is to, or Sam in this juncture, is to not know anything of who he is, so on and so forth. He can make sentences and so on, but he has amnesia, and so the later on in the episodes we'll go on and have Sam consistently ask Al if he has certain kind of bits of knowledge that'll help him out in the story. If Sam is to be able to like also have his character who has certain skills also. But anyways, so Sam is to kind of get up into having his wife saying like, "Hey, I'll make breakfast," and so she's to come back to the room, and then Sam is to realize that Peggy is pregnant, and so she kind of like hugs him, and like Sam is like right there for that belly. So Sam is immediately thinking that this is a dream that he can just wake up from, and so Sam, of course, is going on and consistently talking to Peggy, and Peggy's to tell Sam, it's like, well, hey, aren't you going to get into the shower? And Sam just gets into the shower with his boxers still on because, of course, this is a like a made-for-TV show, so of course, like he's not going to go on and be strutting his stuff in this show. So Sam goes on and gets in the shower because he's just like, I'm hoping that this water will just wake me up. And so Peggy is also telling Tom that she had gotten this thing of shaving cream for him because she had liked the symbols that are on the canister. So Sam then is to go on and in the shower spray this little thing of foam upon his face, and realize it's like all of this seems really real, and Sam is just thinking that he's dreaming, and he's like, when am I going to wake up from this? And so all of a sudden we conveniently have a mirror that is in the shower, and honestly, to me, that doesn't really make sense because when really looking at it, like a mirror would easily fog up like outside of a shower. So you're just gonna have to like consistently wipe that thing. But there's a whole purpose to this. So we have Sam who is to look into this mirror and is to realize that the person looking back at him is not Sam, it's Tom. And so Sam is to just jerk back because he, of course, is to think of himself as Sam and not as this other guy. So Sam is to see somebody in the mirror, and so now Sam pulls Peggy in here and is to ask her, it's like, well, hey, like, who is it that you see in the mirror here? And Peggy's like, well, I see you. And come to find out, we have Tom's character who seems to be this prankster. So we have Tom who runs all of these jokes on everybody. And so when Sam is to desperately try to go on and tell people things, or really just try and get out of doing any of this because he really can't, everybody used to go on and like, oh, Tom, you jokester, you pariah, ha 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 ha, ha, and they just laugh it off. And I was like, wow, like that is like a really interesting way to do this kind of first episode, and to luckily have a character that Sam leaps into that is to always be consistently this jokester, but is to also give so much like future knowledge away in this first episode, which I thought was funny. But so we have Sam that is to find out that he is getting a phone call, of course, from the Air Force, and we have Sam instead jump out of the shower and is to instead memorize this phone number 555-0231, which is always to be a fake phone number. Like if ever there was to be a phone number that starts with 555, it's always a fake one, but it's usually always like 0231 or 0123 or some goofy thing like that. So Sam ends up trying to call after hanging up with the Air Force and not talking to them. Sam calls his phone number, and Sam asks both Peggy and her son, like, well, hey, like, as also Sam is to realize that he is to be a father also in the sleep. But so Sam is to go on and ask what the area code is here, and they're like, area code? What are you talking about? And Sam is to mention the number of which that he called, and it's like, that's too many numbers, and Sam is like, what are you talking about? So Sam is trying to figure this out. He's trying to put it all together, but more and more he just looks like mortified with the shaving cream that is just kind of getting from his face to then his chest almost. So Sam, after going on and just dealing with his crazy morning, Sam then is to go on and meet with a guy who has the nickname Bird Dog, or Captain Bill Burdell. And so both of them are driving off because they're on this military base, and so they're driving to get to their test piloting for the Air Force. And we have Bird Dog that is to drive off to hit on this woman that seems to eventually go nowhere. So we're having Sam and Bird Dog who are talking together, and Sam is to state that maybe he cannot remember how to fly, and Bird Dog is like, wow, that's a funny joke there, Tom. Like, yeah, like you're gonna get him there. You're gonna really get these guys. You might as well tell Weird Ernie that you have completely forgotten things. And but then they also realize, hey, maybe we can pull a joke on them that we're having memory loss when we're going through us flying. Maybe that would be the ruse. And so these guys all go on to talk to Weird Ernie, and so we have at some point where Ernie is to talk about what they're gonna do today, and at some point we have one of the guys who's ribbing Ernie of like, well, hey, like, are you gonna go on with us? And Ernie's like, well, sadly I can't because of my I'm assuming metal plate. This injury would not allow him to go on and be a test pilot. So that's when, of course, the guys start talking about memory loss. And we have Weird Ernie who's like, oh my god, this is fascinating. Because a lot of guys are starting to mention how they forgot where they parked or where they left their keys or something like that. Some kind of like normal day-to-day stuff about like, yeah, I forgot where I left this or that. And it's just like Weird Ernie's like, fascinating. We should go on and have a study about like what all people can remember after they fly. So we turn around and have Al, who is in this kind of this nice suit, and is talking about like the memories and so on and so forth, and how like great this is, and we just go on and have Sam just kind of look at this guy, and it's like, okay, this guy seems so out of place. What is he doing here? And so Al doesn't go on and immediately like really talk to Sam, and Al just starts to say like, well, hey, like it's an 80% chance that you need to go on and do this and so on and so forth, and like you're so and so guy, and like there's none of that here, because of course also Ziggy is having problems giving out that information. Plus, to also it be the point that Ziggy, when we go on into this two-parter, is to also be not sure whether or not the information that he's going to give out is actually accurate yet. Because, of course, it seems that Sam can go on and, like, beat the odds, or that he can go on and realize that he has not leaped yet. And so Sam is just like, well, then what am I here for? What am I here to leap for? And Al and Ziggy are just like, don't know. You got me there. So Sam, of course, is to go on into this plane, and we're having both Bird Dog and Sam talking to one another, and we also have Captain Tommy Lamotte, who is to be a part of this crew, and he is going to be the guy that goes into the X2 to try to get to Mach 3. And so, funny enough, Captain Tommy Lamont, I was like, what do I know him from? And then I was like, oh yeah, like he was in like the Blade series, and he was also in like the SWAT Colin Farrell movie. Because I was like, what do I know him from? Because he looked so familiar, but he looked really young here also. So I was like, where do I know him from? So, anyways, that was a little funny little tidbit. So we have at one point where Bird Dog is to mention that he needs to go and pee. And so Sam is to be left to man the ship here. And when Bird Dog walks away, we have Sam that is not putting his hands on the like on the steering wheel, or whatever this thing is, the plane like steerer, and we just start to have the plane consistently going down, and we all of a sudden have Weird Ernie who's like, well, hey, like, should you guys be going should you guys be doing this? It seems like you guys are really turning to the right a lot. What's going on here? So by the time that finally Bird Dog arrives after taking the leak, we then have Bird Dog say it's like, well, okay, like it seems that everything is back to normal again. And so when Bird Dog takes over, we have Tom stating it's like, well, hey, never go on and have me like try and fly again, because he doesn't know what he's doing. He doesn't know what buttons to push. And also, Al is being a jerk and not really stating anything about like, well, hey, let me help you out here. So, because Al is just in the background, just like do like I don't know what I'm doing here. Do. I'm this hologram. Do. So we go on to have, of course, Captain Tommy Lamont, who goes in the X2, and they end up kind of releasing him from this plane, and so this jet ends up taking off, and he, of course, is to try to make it to Mach 3, and come to find out he doesn't make it. And instead, he ends up having to eject from this plane, and all of the women that are on this base are hoping that this pilot is to release this chute because they're all in this together, because at any point in time this could be their husband, so they're all really like running outside to just be like, okay, like, hey, like, is my husband going to be okay, because I heard this ejection, and so anyways, or this, I heard this explosion, what happened, so on and so forth. So we also have a lot of time in this episode where we have the gals just kind of chit-chatting, where at one point they end up divulging about that some of the guys go on, and when they sleep with their gals, they end up wearing some of their like their Air Force like equipment. They wear like their goggles or their helmets or whatever. And I think in the later part of the episode, they end up also like stating something else, which I don't remember exactly what it was, but I thought that was kind of a funny little tidbit. But anyways, so moving on. So after we have Sam, who gets back on solid ground, and he's like, oh my god, like luckily I just got through this, because of course Sam is just calling this his nightmare. And so when finally we have Sam going on to this after party that is to be at this jukebox, we have everybody going on and talking about like planes and stuff like that, and it seems that Sam is to be very quiet, and Peggy is to realize that Sam is to be like less chatty than usual, and is to be a lot different than who he is, and so on and so forth. So Sam is to go on and ask Peggy about if she notices a guy by the jukebox, and she's like, well, yeah, I noticed this guy. And Sam is like, that's not what I'm talking about. Do you notice a guy that is to be wearing this tuxedo? And Peggy is to state no. So Sam ends up going on to be like, well, maybe I'll go on and I'll check out the jukebox. After it seems that Sam and Peggy are to go on and have a dance, but Sam is to also state to Peggy, it's like, well, hey, like, when she wants to dance more, Sam is just like, well, yeah, like, let's not press it because you are pregnant. So Sam goes over to the jukebox and is trying to talk to Al, and Al just thinks that this is business as usual, and Sam goes to Al and is just like, who are you? Like, why am I here? And Al's like, what? And so Al is just like, you don't know what my name is. And Sam is like, no. And so we go on and have one of the guys who is immediately thinking that Sam is talking to himself by this jukebox. And so the guy's like, hey, the old talking to yourself at the jukebox thing, eh? Like, I'm like, that was kind of cringe. To go on and just like mention how often this guy talks to himself. So we could have immediately had Sam said, it's like, well, yeah, I'm really picky about what music that I'm just trying to talk it out. That's what he probably should have gone on and said. So Al is like, oh my god, like, we have had you leap into all these things and you could have just like You could have killed some people. Oh my god. So Al is realizing that he needs to leave, and so Sam is following him outside to then see Al, who is to open this door and close it. And Sam ends up turning to God and says, like, please, God, help me, kind of thing. Help me. So get me out of this nightmare. Get me out of whatever this is. So Sam is to go on and have him and Peggy drive off to make their way home. And so that's when Peggy starts hitting Tom up about how he seems to be very different. And Sam is to then confess, it's like, well, what if I'm not actually Tom? Like, what if I'm someone else? And Peggy's like, what do you mean? And then Sam has to turn around and then just state to Peggy, it's like, oh no, like I'm just pulling some rib, like me and like Bird Dog are just goofing, and like I'm working out this whole new joke and seeing if it's gonna work. And Peggy's like, oh thank God, oh yeah. So we have Sam that goes on to the next day, and when he's getting up, we have, I think, Tom, who I think is again trying to remember more things about his family. Uh, because when Sam wakes up, he's starting to realize that he was on a barn, and like like he's also trying to remember other things, but then he's like, no, let's stick to the barn. So he realizes that he has a sister, and like who her sister had fallen in love with, and then he remembers his dad, and that his dad had died at a certain time period. So Tom is just like, wait a minute, now I can go on and call my dad because he's still alive during this time period. So Sam goes on and tries to call this number and is trying to figure out like where exactly he can figure out how to get uh, to call his dad, but he doesn't know his dad's full name. So, although Sam is dealing with that, we then realize that Tom's son is now asking Sam about like, well, hey, like, are we gonna go on that fishing trip? And so Sam is just like, well, like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea, so on and so forth. Um, because Peggy used to mention how like Sam is going on and spending a lot more time with Tom's son than Tom had ever gone on and done. So Tom, it seems, was to like go on and play ball with his son out in the yard, while all the guys are just talking about things, um, and all the gals are kind of gossiping and whatever. But so we have Sam go on this fishing trip with his son, and immediately Sam is to take this kind of uh, like fishing line and kind of dump it right into this tree. And Sam ends up turning to Tom's son and it's just like, well, like here, like that's what's not to do. I was just showing you. So Tom's son is just like, well, it's okay, Dad. I know you're trying to just make me look good. And Sam is like, oh, that's nice. So Sam is to walk off to state that he's gonna kind of fish a little bit more upstream. And really, what Sam is actually trying to do is talk to Al. And so while Sam is trying to get answers from Al, Al is stating that everything that he can really give Sam answers on is classified, and Sam is not on a need to know basis. That he doesn't need to know anything. So we have Sam who's just like, well, come on, you gotta give me something. So Alice mentioned that it's like, well, like you're in this Quantum Leap project, and Sam is like, what is that? And Al's like, well, that's class. And so it's like, you can't really tell me anything at all. And so, like, who am I? Like, where am I? What am I doing here? Al has nothing. So we have Sam who's getting more and more frustrated with his imaginary friend. And so, but Sam is starting to remember things like Gushy and Ziggy and all these characters. So we, I think, have one point where I think Al, or I think when Sam actually remembers like a ton of more stuff, is I think when Sam is to go on and mail this letter to, like, he ends up pulling like the Back to the Future thing where he mails a letter from the past to the future, and that's when I think Sam starts to remember a lot of things. Not everything, but he remembers a lot. And so at some point Sam will remember things, but it's all just hazy and whatever he needs to just do right now. So after this fishing trip, we then have Sam that is, oh my god. I missed the transitional moment. Uh we ugh. I'm trying to think how to smoothly get past this. So, let me pause here for a second. Aha. While I was to, of course, go on this little break, I found out that yes, this was like a legitimate like 2 episode thing, and the first episode went on to be like a to be continued, and then the second episode goes in and it starts with Sam and Al is going on and explaining Sam, like that's the whole scene where Al and Sam are talking about the Quantum Leap project, and having Al having to explain it to Sam in layman's terms, because Al would have gone on and had to have explained it to every like Tom, Dick, and President. Now he has to go on and explain it to now Sam. After it seems that Al is at some point after the first leap popping champagne bottles and partying for a whole 6 days for whatever reason. So so that's good. So the way of which that the first episode is to end, because I think I've covered most of everything in this first episode from what I remember, we go and have this day off for the guys, it seems, as there is to be like this other plane that is taking off into the air, and so Sam ends up coming in to talk to uh, Peggy, and is to mention how beautiful she looks, and they end up going on and kissing one another, and Peggy then realizes after kissing Sam that something doesn't quite feel right, and she's like, So that ends up concluding the first episode, and so now going into the next episode, we are to go on and have to recap everything from this first episode. So Luckily, instead of it just feeling, it is a storyline thing, but I guess it is a double episode for whatever reason. That was so confusing to me, but now luckily I figured that out somewhere in this review. So going into now the second episode, we start the second episode off with now Sam needing to go on and fly this X2 to get to Mach 3. And when Sam and Al were trying to figure out what Al could really tell Sam, because all of the stuff is all classified, Sam is asking Al, it's like, well, how soon do you think that you guys can kind of get me out of here? And Al is like, well, this day. And Sam is like, well, that's too late, because Sam is going to have to go on and be in the X2, needing to go Mach 3, and like that is going to be far too late for them to try to figure out what they can do to help Sam here. So, and plus also Al is stating that he doesn't know if he could really go on and legitimately help Sam fly this aircraft. So pushing on. So we have Sam and now Al in the beginning of all this, and so we are in the second episode to go on and have Weird Ernie and this doctor who are coming up with these questionnaires to then hand off to Sam, and Sam is to state that this is some weird, like, trivial pursuit, and this doctor and Weird Al is like, wow, that seems like a perfect word to call this, as they were trying to go on and have their names being put into this whole procedure, but then ended up calling it like a trivial pursuit kind of thing, because the name sounded interesting. So it's everything that all these guys can go on and remember, and I think it's funny because at the end of the episode, we have Sam who is to go on and have this joke on these guys because he's mentioning all of these things that he can all remember, and none of it makes a lick of sense to any of them because all the stuff that he ends up mentioning is all stuff that doesn't exist within this time period. Like, we go on to have Sam in this paperwork stating things about mini skirts and pantyhose and pet rocks and like all of these things that don't exist in 1956. So yeah, like they were to all think that this was just some running gag, and so these guys just had a good laugh about it, but they were really also just frustrated by the time that they wasted. So anyways, we have Sam and we have Al, and we'll finally get to this conversation where we have Sam who is realizing that Al is a hologram. He's a fake thing. And we have at points where Al is just kind of phasing through things. He's like walking through certain like planes or just certain objects. And so Sam is going on and saying like, well, why can't you just walk around? And Al's like, walk around? Like, all of this is just a hologram to me, and this is real to you, where, so it's like kind of the opposite here, but Al's like, okay, I'll play your game, like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. So, we have Al, and here's the funny thing in my brain. If Sam is to start to realize that Al is just in this cavern somewhere, and, like he states, like, how is it that Al seems to have all of the walking room to be able to get around everywhere? Like, how big is that room that, of course, either Sam or Al is in? Why is it that not at some point these guys are to not go on, and like if Al can just go and open up this door and leave this hologram, why is it that like we can't have these guys just kind of walk into a wall somewhere and realize that like, oh crap, like I've gone on and in this cavern like expended all of the space to get around in, like unless they could not have gone on and wrote that into an episode somewhere. But I don't know, maybe that's just me. uh, but some people might have to go on and explain the science of the room of which that either Sam or Al are both in, because that would be cool. So, either way, more than likely there might be like a treadmill underneath these guys, and wherever they go, it could just be that. So, or they're walking in place in their own hologramish thing. I don't know. So, anyways, uh, so we have Sam talking to Al and realizing that that Al is going to have to go on and explain to Sam what quantum leap is. And so he ends up using this string example. He ends up going on to have like one end of this string and the other end of the string are to be like Sam's like entire life from the day that he was born to the day that he is to live. And then come to find out, like quantum leap is to just take those time periods and just put them in a big massive ball, and to have just kind of like that ball turn into a roll of the dice to see what time period Sam is going to go on within the time that he was born to the time that he could die, like to see where he's going to end up. So Sam then is to start to have it jog his memory about the science of it all, and so he ends up understanding like what Al is to really be in. And so Al is starting to remember things as Al is trying to explain it to him. So luckily for that, right? Otherwise, we'd have a number of episodes where Sam is just like, I still don't get Quantum Leap, explain it to me. And Al is just like, well, like, it was a cold summer breeze. And kind of like Sheldon in Big Bang Theory, where he goes on and tries to explain physics to Penny. It was a cold summer breeze. And so we then have Sam, who, of course, is to go on to go into the plane because he then has to be the guy who goes into the X2 to fly to Mach 3. Because we've already had, of course, the bird dog who has gone on and fly the jet, and he ends up kind of singing this song and doing this goofy thing, and weird Ernie is going on and telling bird dog to like make the channel as clear as possible so that way they can have something more important than him singing on the radio. So Sam is going on, and he, of course, is to wait to end up getting put in this plane. We also had the one scene in the early part of this where when Sam was to consistently see Al, we had Sam who is asking Bird Dog, it's like, well, hey, is everybody in the proper place where they should be? As Al is just kind of standing there like, yeah, like I'm just standing here looking at you. And Bird Dog is just like, yeah, it seems like everyone's in place because Bird Dog cannot actually see Al. So Sam is just like, okay, whoever that guy is. So Sam is consistently, when almost getting into the X2, he is consistently saying, Albert, little help here, little assistance. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm going to die. So we have Sam being put in his Mach 2. He ends up taking it off, and like we're having Sam was like, I don't know what I'm gonna. And so finally, Al then appears and is like side by side next to Sam, and I'm kind of wondering how exactly they did this shot. Like maybe like there was a whole thing where they had to like open up the cockpit a little bit. I don't know, like how they exactly did this, or maybe it was just like a whole maybe that was a CGI moment where like Al is on a green screen and some other. I don't know how they did it, but I'm kind of curious how they did it. Maybe Scott Bakula would go on and tell us that. Maybe there's an interview somewhere where he states how they did it. Or maybe maybe Scott Bakula at some point will have a Quantum Leap podcast. Because everybody has a podcast. Like, man, if Scott Bakula was to have a podcast about not only Quantum Leap, then Enterprise, and whatever else that he went on and did, the one show with Ray Romano, whatever that was. Anyways, so let me know the answer of that in the comments below, so I can get a comment. It would be great. So, for those of you that immediately have IMDb, like I do, and I just don't want to thumb through it right now to figure out what that show was. So, Sam goes into the Mach 2 and is getting guided by Al, and so we go on to have Sam, who is kind of adjusting these buttons, flipping switches, and so before Sam was to leave, Tom Lamont was mentioning to Sam that at some point he ended up smelling coffee when before he ejected, and so Sam was like, okay, that's unusual. And come to find out, by the time that they get close to Mach 3, they have Sam realize it's like, well, yeah, like something is boiling, and Al is to state, yeah, that's the fuel, like it's really cooking, and so that might be the problem of why they're having issues getting to Mach 3, because of the oil that is just kind of cooking, because they're going really fast. So we are to have Sam go on and realize that he was to have died not getting to Mach 3 from the timeline. His character, Tom, was to die. So Al is to state to Sam that it's not about him going on and him needing to land this plane, because Al is just like, well, I don't know if I can, like, I can probably tell you how to, like, lift off, and I can tell you how to like fly it, but I don't know if I can tell you how to land. But Al is just like, well, we don't even need to like lift off, because the other plane is going to do all the heavy lifting there, and so all you need to do is just eject once you hit Mach 3. So Sam goes on and is to just barely just like tap the Mach 3, and then Al's like, okay, Sam, you hit Mach 3, eject. So Sam goes on and ejects, and luckily he makes it, and we go on to have Peggy, who is to kind of hear the sounds of the plane, and she is to get very concerned, realizing that her husband is probably dead. So Peggy goes into early signs of labor and is to call her friends to like, hey man, let's get to the hospital. There's something wrong. There's something peeking. So I don't know where that's from, but that's always a funny joke. There's something peeking. Anyways, so we have Sam that ends up kind of landing, and the guys are all to pick him up. And so when he's making it back, we have the doctor who's kind of checking his blood pressure, is checking if everything is okay. And so now, like, Sam is technically talking to the doctor, but everything that Sam is talking to the doctor about is also connected to what really Al is stating. So Sam is now like, "Hey, I'm still here. Why?" And the doctor is like, "Well, of course you're still here. Good job." And Al's just like, "Yeah, like we can't figure out why you're still here yet. So maybe it's going to be the atom bomb thing, where you're just going to have to go on and live this person's whole entire life, and then when he dies, maybe you'll come back to us." Here's also the thing: in the later episodes, we go on and have whoever that Sam leaps into, they end up getting a room where Al can talk to that person and find out things about them. I guess they can't go on and like, did they do that here? Like, did they do that so early in the show? Uh, because I remember in the later seasons them going on and really needing to like talk to these guys who Sam leaps into and gives them more time, and so on and so forth. But anyways, so Sam is to be very upset with Al and is to continue to talk to him, and everything that works for Al is also working for this doctor. So, come to find out, Sam is to realize that Peggy is pregnant and they're rushing him to the hospital, and so we have Sam talking to not only this military doctor, but then is to also talk to this doctor that is at this hospital. And so they're going on and stating that this pregnancy may go on and either just save Peggy or save the baby. And so they're trying to figure out what the solution can be. And Sam is just coming up with these big, huge, elaborate words. That, of course, I'm like, dang, Sam. Just bust out that, like, beta liber gabba whatever goofy jargon that you have to say here. I'm not even going to try to pronounce any of those words because why would I? But he's like, beta liber gabba, and I was like, what the f is that? So Sam is to start to realize what time period is in, and he realizes that any of the medical stuff is to not have been invented till like the 60s or the 70s, and so he's like, crap, what can I use? And so, come to find out, Sam is to come up with this solution, and so he pulls this military doctor aside, and he says like, well, like alcohol. Like, go on and just make Peggy drunk and get her some purple drink, and like she'll be okay. She won't go into labor, and like it'll all work out. So come to find out, Sam is to get Peggy really drunk, and it seems that all is to work out. And so when Sam is to go on and realize that it's like, okay, that must have been the one thing that I needed to do to stick around to come up with a solution to then leap the heck out of here. And so like, yep, that's what it was. So we all of a sudden then have Sam, who is to finally go on and leap here. And so now we come to find out that Sam is to leap into this baseball player. So we have him leaping into, I'm assuming, this minor league team. And so this, of course, is 1968, if I'm correct about that. Yeah. And so we have Sam, who is now this outfielder, and he's to go on and catch this ball. and he's kind of like, huh? And like one of the guys in the stadium is like, hey, like no one's gonna take your picture there, buddy. So Fox is like, oh, I got to run back in because now we're batting. So we have now Sam that is like very confused of like, well, hey, why am I here? So Sam is going on and talking to Al again, who is in this dugout, and so Al is getting like really into this game, and like if in the first episode Al was talking about like he was hungover and like don't have like Sam yell at him and so on and so forth, we then go on and have Al who is coming back to Sam, and he is to state that Al has been away for about a week in like Sam's time, and they've been shopping or they've been popping champagne and having parties, and so plus to all get really prepared for the next leap. So who knows what Sam has really been doing, just kind of sleeping the whole entire time, or they couldn't figure out how to get him out, so they just kind of left him there. So Al is to now not only tell Sam about this new leap, but then is to also tell him about the last leap. And so Al ends up telling Sam that he is Timothy Tim Fox. And in this leap, this guy had been in the minor leagues, and because he had gotten this leg injury and he had gotten sent down, and that was 5 years ago. Now it seems that Fox is to be pretty close to retirement. It seems like he's going to have this chicken franchise, and so or this restaurant franchise, and so it seems that the thing that we need to try and do here is have this team go off on a win instead of having this team lose. So we also are to tell uh, Sam about the last leap, where it seems that everything had worked out fine, that Peggy had had that kid and had named it Samantha, and everything had turned out hunky dory and whatever for all of those people there, and so on and so forth. So Sam is to now have to go on and find out what his full name is. Because even though Al is to realize that Sam can't know anything because all of it's classified, Al breaks what Gushy is to tell him, and so Al goes on and tells Sam that his full name is Sam Beckett. So Sam then is to go on and go to this operator and call his dad, because he knows where his dad is living at this time period, but he just doesn't know like how to get the phone number. He doesn't remember the phone number. It's been too long. So Sam ends up going for the operator and tries to call his daddy. And so come to find out, we just have Sam that is to state that he is to be this relative of the Becketts, and that he is to be Sam's dad's brother's nephew. So what I mean by that is that uh, this guy who is calling Sam's dad is to be uh, like the nephew, the cousin, and whatever a of a brother of, I think, Jonathan. Was it Jonathan? I don't think it states anywhere. Um, Maybe I'm wrong about that. But so we have Sam's dad who ends up having a conversation with finding out that his uh, like Sam's dad was to state that it's like, well, like I thought you guys were in Australia, and Sam states is like, oh no, like I've been traveling all over the place, so since I was in town, I thought I would call. And so Sam goes on this long rant about him possibly not being able to make it to Thanksgiving, and so Sam's father is mentioning like, well, hey, like if you're like in town, then like you can come to our place because they're family. And Sam is like, well, I really appreciate that. And so we have Sam that just so much wants to tell his father that he loves him. And when he answers the phone, he ends up calling him dad. And then he's like, oh, yeah, like I have to just kind of make up a reason for why I'm calling. So, like, so much about that was like, oh my God, this is so great. And so after Sam hangs up the phone and turns to go back to bat for the Wacos, we have Sam run in and talk about some like farming an emergency, and Sam's dad is just like, well, hey, like, just letting you know that your nephew is probably going to come for Thanksgiving. He's from Australia, and Sam's like, oh, okay, great, well, whatever. So, we go on to have now, of course, after Sam is to look in the mirror about who he is and so on and so forth. So Sam goes on to go up to bat, and we have the coach who is telling Sam here. It's like, well, hey, like I don't want to go out into the cellar. It's like, come on, let's win this one. So Sam is thinking it's like, well, yeah, like I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna get this home run. Like it's all gonna work out. So Sam gets up to bat, and this guy is throwing like 100 miles an hour heaters, and so Sam was like, dang, like the coach was complaining to all the other guys about everybody going on and like swinging in the first pitch, and Sam does not go on and swing at the first pitch, and so the coach is like, hey, somebody listens. So the first pitch is to be a strike one, and so Sam is to go on and try and swing at the second pitch, and that ends up being strike two. And so we're like, oh my God, like this is going to end poorly. So come to find out, we have Sam who doesn't even connect with the ball. What ends up happening is we have the pitcher that ends up going and tossing this ball, but the catcher ends up dropping it and it ends up rolling away. And so Al is telling Sam like, hey, run for first base, run for first base. And so Sam's like, oh my God, yeah, like I guess I should. And so Sam runs for first base, and then bizarrely, all these guys are really horrible at catching this ball. So Sam is like running all the bases. We have like an inside the park home run, bizarrely, because we couldn't have just had Sam who smacks and hits this homer, and it's gone because supposedly originally Al is to mention that Sam's Tim Fox character was to go on and just hit a fly out to center. So we go on to have Sam that is to be running these bases because every time they throw to some base somewhere, they end up like second base or third base. Like everybody's just dropping this ball though. Like we can't get to it. So Sam does this inside the park home run, and he ends up sliding into home base, and it's safe. And so we have the Wacos, the Bombers, who end up winning, and that ends up, of course, having immediately after that, where Sam just goes on and leaps out of his character. It's like, yeah, we really didn't get a history of that character. That was just some brief thing that was just kind of push us on into another leap. I'm like, man, how many, like, in one episode, I'm kind of curious of how many leaps has Sam ever done in one episode besides just the normal two? Like, if there has gone on and been like multiple different leaps in one episode where he has to do these tiny little tasks and then he leaps and then he does these tiny little tasks and then he leaps. Like, I'm just kind of curious, like, if there has ever been an episode where he's gone on and done like the least amount of like fact checking and whatever to go on and leap through a good number of people. So we then have Sam, who is now leaped into this college, and he, of course, is to now be Dr. Gerald Bryant, who is to be this seemingly college professor of what I do not know, because it seems that that is to, of course, not be exactly all that important, because in the description it goes on and states that he is in some Ohio college and he is a literature professional. Sure, whatever that means. But we'll get to that via the next leap, which hopefully will not be the leap home, so we can go on and cover most of what is to be the next thing, the next episode. Considering I then figured out that these are 2 episodes now, like, I'm just going to continue on to hopefully do the 2 episodes as long as there's not too many, like, very complicated episodes, because I was very worried that I was going to go on and not be able to remember all of this, even though it probably seems simple enough to certain people. It's always just a lot of information, and plus also when I'm skipping around and not going into exact stuff, people could go on and get very ticked because it's like, well, hey, you didn't say that one thing that I thought was the funniest thing about this episode, blah 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 blah. I'm like, sorry. Uh, Also, the second thing that the girls bicker about, because I think she was to go on, and one of the gals was to look at this magazine of this one celebrity, and the gal was to complain about how, like, this girl has uh, a bigger bust than the girl in the magazine. And we have Peggy that states to this woman, it's like, well, that's because you're pregnant. That's why yours is bigger than hers. And they end up making this crack and this joke and so on and so forth. It's like, well, maybe she's pregnant also. And so they're like, ha 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 ha. So that was the second argument that the girls were going into, the second gossip moment or whatever. But anyways, I'm just going to go on and try to get out of here because I realize that this is an hour and 30 minutes and I've already been talking for an hour and 22. So goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.